Good evening. Welcome to today's Monday's Zazen and Zen class. First of all, next week will be a day off. I will be in Antaiji and also there will be no pranayama. So check back in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, we're gonna do Zen and Zazen again. Today I want to talk about Fukan Zazengi, but before that, let's sit together for half an hour.
下周的课停一次啊，得休息。然后我们今天前面还是先坐禅，老师去安泰寺，所以我们下周休息一节课啊。
Thank you for joining. So today I want to talk again about Fukan Zazengi, Dogen's manual for Zazen practice. And just as last time, I would like to share the screen with you. What do we have here? On the right side you got the Chinese original text. On the left side there's the Japanese. I won't read it from the start this time. The part that I want to talk about today is the last part of the introduction. In Japanese it would be Yue ni subeka raku koto o tazune go o ou no gegyo o kyusu beshi. Subeka raku eko hensho no taihou o gakusu beshi. Shinjin jinen ni datsuraku shite honrai no menmoku genzen sen. Immono-ji o ento hosseba kyu ni immono-ji o tsutomeyo. In English that would be, after the introduction and pointing to the examples of Shakyamuni and Bodhidharma and asking, well, if even the old guys put so much effort into the practice, how can you excuse yourself from the practice? Dogen Zenji continues, stop chasing words and looking for letters would be one possible English translation. Let's have a look at the Antaiji page. Put aside the intellectual practice of investigating words and chasing phrases. So stop thinking about, well, the meaning of Buddhism or the meaning of Zazen. And that's probably why Sawaki Roshi says straightforward, Zazen is good for nothing. Because unless we are told so, there's always this question, well, what's the meaning of this? Where will I get to by Zazen? And how will I get there? Put aside the intellectual practice of investigating words and chasing phrases and learn to take the backward step that turns the light and shines it inward. That's a quite famous phrase from the Fukan Zazengi. Taking a step backwards and turning the light around so that it shines inwards. Eko hensho. I think that describes pretty well most meditation techniques or also mindfulness practices. That rather than being absorbed in the game, so to speak, you take a step backwards from the game, or using the metaphor of the screen in the cinema that we've been using a lot of times. Rather than identifying yourself with the main actor in the movie, you take a step back and learn to just observe. But I don't know how it is for you. In my case, my experience with Zazen often was quite the opposite. Already as a kid, I was quite introverted, and for me it felt, until I got into Zen, I was always kind of living my life, always taking a step backwards. I was always kind of looking at myself from, so to speak, the back row of the cinema theater. I was never really in the game. And for me, so getting into Zen was quite opposite. Learning to just live this moment rather than ask myself, what is life? What does it mean to live? So it's interesting that Dogen Zenji here uses this expression, taking the step backward and shining the light inward. But I don't think it means that we never really step onto the stage and always just contemplate about the game, so to speak. For example, in the Genjo Koan, there's this metaphor of the bird and the fish, and they just fly, they just swim in the sky, in the ocean. And Dogen Zenji says, well, if the bird or the fish would first think about how can I fly, or how big is the sky, how is it possible that I swim, how big is the ocean, will there be enough space for me in the ocean, then they would never be able to fly or swim. But a fish just flies. In a way, a fish would never have the idea to take a step backward. The fish is already in its element and practices in its element. For me, Zazen, like if I had to express it, for me, Zazen was much more of a step forward, so to speak, into the light, onto the stage, and also connecting to my body. That's how I got into the Fukan Zazengi, where I was talking about this phrase, Shinjin Ichinyo, body and mind are connected. And while I was always taking this step backwards, I was only identifying with my mind. And I thought, well, this body is not my real me. For me, Zazen, taking the step forward was also kind of connection with the body, identifying with the body. But maybe I'll stop here and Xuan-san can translate.
I think I can translate later today. Only my
Okay, then I continue for a little bit. Shine the light inward. Then the next sentence is, your body and mind will drop away of themselves. In Japanese, that's Shinjin Datsulaku, or in this case, Shinjin Jinen ni Datsulaku Sen. So naturally, body and mind drop off. And I think we talked about this phrase, Shinjin Datsulaku. They say that Dogen Zenji had this experience when he went to China. He uses this phrase both in the Genjo Koan chapter, where he says to study the Buddha way means to study yourself. What does it mean to study yourself? It means to forget yourself. What does it mean to forget yourself? It means to be, well, authenticated, you could say, or to be proven by the 10,000 things. You discover yourself in everything you see and hear. What does that mean? It means that your body and mind and the body of mind of all others drop off. And another chapter where Dogen Zenji uses the phrase is the Shoji chapter of the Shobogenzo. Shoji means life and death. And there, towards the end, Dogen Zenji says, just let go of your body and mind. Throw them into the house of the Buddha. And that's also another expression for body and mind dropping off. And when you let go of body and mind, throw them into the house of Buddha, then from the side of the Buddha, everything will be done, and you, without investing your own strength, without using your mind, will become a Buddha as well. So Dogen Zenji here basically says this is going to happen naturally when you stop chasing and take that backward step, which again for me often felt more like a forward step. I was always retreating, and Zazen allowed me to take that step forward. the body and mind will drop away of themselves and your original face will manifest. Honrai no memmoku in Japanese. There's also that famous koan, show me your original face that you had before your mother or father were born. What is that original face? Well, for one thing, it's the normal face that you have, the face that you see if you look in the mirror. But not only that, but actually, for example, there's a poem by Dogen Zenji that has the title Honrai no Memmoku. So the title of the poem is Original Face, and it goes like the flowers of spring and the song of the cuckoo in summer. In autumn, the moon, and in winter, the snow. That's cold and serene. And that's the whole poem. It's a waka. So it's 5, 7, 5, 7, 7 syllables. And the title is The Original Face. So basically, in spring, when you see the flowers, that's your original face. In the autumn, when you see the moon, that's your original face. There's nothing that wouldn't be your original face. It's just that usually you don't see it because you only see things outside of yourself. You see concepts. You put labels on that stuff. But when body and mind drop away, you see just this. If you want to get into touch with things as they are, you, right here and now, have to start being yourself as you are. Being as you are. Some translations here use the phrase suchness. So if you want to get into contact with suchness, or if you want to get a grasp on suchness, you have to be such a person, would be another translation. The Japanese term, or the two Chinese characters, are these two that I marked. In Japanese you read them immo. I don't know if they're in current use in China, but at the time of Dogen, obviously, in Chinese they meant not much more as, well, such, or so, or this, or that, or it, for example. But Dogen Zenji, he wrote a whole chapter of the Shobogenzo about these two characters, Immo. Immo is also the title of a Shobogenzo character. And basically, Immo for him is also an expression of, well, the original face or the self. Things as they are, you could also say. So if you want to get into touch with this, you only have to, right here and now, be yourself. There's nothing to find somewhere outside. You have to be such a person to get into touch with suchness, so to speak. If you want to get into touch with things as they are, you have to be just the way you are. Okay, maybe so far from my side for today. So in 2 weeks, or in 3 weeks, in 2 weeks I want to get back to Sawaki's quotes. In 3 weeks we will start with the actual part where Dogen Zenji is explaining about how to adjust the physical posture, what kind of room is suitable for Zazen. But that I will get to in 3 weeks. How about you? Do you have any question, anything that you would like to ask?
I have a question about dropping away of body and mind.
Yes, please.
So it's Shinjin Datsuraku, is
Yes.
that right? And in this one, he adds another one or two characters to
Yes.
it, which mean naturally.
Yes.
And then just as an aside, when he wrote Japanese this long ago, it's all just, he writes the entire passage in kanji with no additional hiragana or anything.
In this case, yeah. So
Okay.
Dogen Zenji wrote two kinds of texts. Some of them he wrote in Japanese, and then he also uses kana, hiragana, mostly. And some of the stuff, especially official stuff that were meant to be read by his students, those he wrote, as was usual at the time, in Chinese. And this Fukan Zazengi, it was a kind of official statement how you make Zazen. So this he wrote in Chinese. Also the Tenzo Kyokun, for example, the instructions for the cook, those are written in Chinese. But Shobo Genzo is written in kana, so in old Japanese, and was kind of unusual for the time, especially that male persons, monks, would write in kana. It was more connected to female literature. And I have the feeling that stuff that for Dogen were more of a private nature, he would write in kana. So also probably Shobo Genzo for him was more something private for himself, or maybe for only a close circle of students. While the stuff that was intended to be read by a large group of people, that he would write in Chinese. So the text that you're reading right now, that was more kind of official, meant for everyone.
So you are fluent in Japanese, but not Chinese. Can you understand his Chinese text a little bit?
If I look at the characters, yes, but if I really want to understand it well, I have to look at the, like for example, what I just showed you in the beginning. This here would be a Japanese rendering of the Chinese text, and I have this. It's not so easy because it's old classical Japanese, but that helps me a lot. If I look at this part here, well, because I know the Japanese, I can see that's what corresponds to this here. But I would have great difficulties understanding this if I wouldn't know the Japanese. I know a lot of these characters, so I know what the Chinese is about, but it would be probably impossible for me to understand the sentence as a whole if I wouldn't already know it.
Okay, so the main part of my question is my image of dropping away body and mind. I want like I think it's not right sometimes because I'll be doing Zazen and I'll feel like, okay, I just can kind of drop and relax. But then you also have to hold yourself up straight. So you have to, so that I think that's not what he's saying though. But so the Datsuraku part, is it like an image of just like letting go of like you're holding something and you release it?
Yes. You could say so. And it's not really something that you do. Like today, he's inserting the two characters which mean naturally or of themselves. So we're talking about these two characters. Body and mind. So this is body and mind. Body and mind naturally or by themselves drop off. So this dropping off is not something that you do. It's not that you intentionally drop off body and mind. Now I let go. But rather like leaves in the autumn. When it's time for them to drop, maybe there's a wind blowing and that finally does it. So Dogen Zenji says, just stop chasing. If you stop chasing, and then there's this expression of taking the step backwards. If you stop chasing, take the backward step and shine the light inward by itself, body and mind will drop off. There's really nothing extra that you have to do.
So this can happen. I'm sorry, just to finish the question. This can happen when you're doing Zazen and you have pain in your knee, or you have like some normal discomfort in your back, and you're still keeping your posture straight, and you're not totally like, maybe not feeling like the most comfortable you've ever been. Like it like sometimes happens, and you can still be doing this.
Yeah, what you're talking about, I think, is there's this very fine line between fighting yourself through and making yourself comfortable. And Zazen means to find that very fine line. Usually, we tend to either make ourselves comfortable when it gets difficult, or we make this effort. No, I'm not gonna move. It hurts, but I'm not gonna move. And then we already do too much. Body and mind dropping off happens when you find this very fine line in between. Probably the same can happen in yoga, when it's not you doing yoga anymore, but also you're not being lazy. In a way, yoga is doing yoga. And in this case, we would say Zazen is doing Zazen. And it's not just a matter of waiting for that to happen. You have to do your part for that to happen. But it's also important not to overdo it. And that's probably where most of us, we ask ourselves over and over again, am I doing too much, or maybe I'm not doing enough? And we kind of, sometimes we take 3 steps forward and then we take 3 steps back again. But it's really, really hard to find that sweet spot where it's not too much, but it's also not enough. Anything else? Julian has raised his hand. Julian, please.
I was just going to say that I was talking to a Zen priest in northern Japan in March about doing too much, about making too much effort, and he was talking about Zen Byo, about Zazen illness, which I don't think I have any chance of developing, but it's a real problem to make too much effort in this, isn't it, and not find that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just thought I'd mention that along the way.
Genjo-san, please.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear the comments from 2 of them until now, because you translated that sentence, your body and mind will drop away of themselves.
Yes.
But it's a big problem, I think, in Germany. Like Julian said, it's Zen sickness. In German, it's translated, let the body and the mind drop off. It says you are the subject who does actively. And everyone hears that sentence. And I've never heard in German, your body and mind will drop away of themselves. And they just, they making efforts on and on and on. And I said, no, it's the body and mind drop away. And they can't get it. They cannot let go what they've learned until now. Let the body, mind drop away. I have to do that. They say, no, I don't think I try to do that, but they cannot let the concept away they've learned until now. what would you do in that case? Probably you know how it is in Germany. But sometimes I really have a difficulty to hear that sentence again and again and again. And they believe that, and they make the Zen or practice itself more difficult than necessary.
Yeah.
Could you please say something for that? I have a difficulty here, please.
Yeah, I mean it's even very difficult in your own case, even much more difficult to help others. We tend to constantly, well, do just as I said to Chris, either we do too much or we don't do enough, and because, well, when you say you don't have to let go of body mind, they will drop off themselves. Then you have these people that say, okay, then I sit on my couch and watch my Netflix movies and wait until my body and mind will drop off and I'll have a bottle of beer. And, well, that's not the answer either. So, I mean, the art is letting go, as I sometimes say. So it's not enough to just tell yourself, I have to let go of this, I have to let go of that. You have to let go of the idea of letting go. But that, of course, is not the same as, well, watching Netflix movies and having a bottle of beer and your potato chips. That's not the meaning of letting go. So that's the difficulty. What I explained with kind of finding that sweet spot. That's really hard to find. And I think in practice, in reality, it's kind of we go back and forth, and at one point when we already have given up, so to speak, or often it's that moment of giving up when you realize, oh, it is kind of, it's so easy, but you kind of have to be desperate to be able to give up. So that's the paradox. You really have to make a desperate effort so that you're finally able to give up, and then you realize, oh, that's what it means to let go, or letting go happens in that moment. But I think a lot of people, they experience as this kind of giving up. It's not that you fight and fight and fight and finally you get it. It's more like the moment when you give up and then, oh, I was, like Dogen Zenji is using this famous phrase of you open the hand and then you find it, oh, it was in my hand all the time. It's just that I couldn't see it because I was trying to hold onto something else. It's that moment of opening the hand and, it was so close. I was holding it here all the time. Bernal, please.
Okay, thank you. From Fukan Sasengi, the part that said "stop chasing words" remind me a phrase from Nisargadatta Maharaj that I saw on Twitter 2 days ago, and it goes like this: you imagine that truth is a thing that carries the name truth, and that is advantageous to have it, provided it is genuine. Hence your fear of being cheated. You're shopping for truth, but you don't trust the merchants. You're afraid of for forgeries and imitations.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we need words and concepts even to communicate that it's not about words and concepts. I mean, even the Fukan Zazengi, it's all words. But the best thing these words can remind us of is that it's not words. That you really have to, well, do it. It's about, what you do in your day-to-day practice. Or more often than not, as we just said, it's about, well, the non-doing part. Stop doing it and allowing it to happen.
So, some teachers and some texts that I've read they use it more as a pointer, not as it.
Yes.
Right? Like don't confuse the finger with the
moon.
With the moon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Anything else that you would like to ask or share? Is it today again a special day in China? Why is there so few Chinese students?
I don't know. I think it's some festival. I don't know.
Ask your parents.
今天 because some of my students they work during the weekend too this week.
I see. Uh-huh.
Bruno maybe knows. He's in China.
No, I'm in China. Nothing.
Nothing special. So
nothing
maybe
special.
people are just.
They just like to work here.
I see. Great. Yeah. Well, it's a few minutes past 9 already. So if you have no more questions, in 1 week there's gonna happen nothing here. So it's a great opportunity to do nothing. Let body and mind drop off. And then 2 weeks in 2 weeks it will be Sawaki's To You again. And then in 3 weeks we continue with today's text. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you Xuan-san for hosting us. And please have a nice 2 weeks.
You too, Mo.
Thank you.
Thank you.